Cool. So I'm Eric, and here with Richard Josephson. We're gonna speak about his book, Masters and the Master. I just recently reread it again, quite a few years later, and I just had some questions that kind of came up through that process, and Richard offered to record this, which is generous and very kind. So appreciate it.
You're welcome. I'd just like to say, Eric received the early draft before it was printed, and he encouraged me to go ahead and find a publisher. I was doubtful. I just wrote it as just on my own reflection, and Eric was an impetus to get it into publication and circulate it around to more people and get other opinions. So I'd like to thank Eric for that. And I'd like to also say it's an auspicious time to do this review because it's 2 days before my teacher's, Master Xuanhua's Nirvana celebration here at the City of 10,000 Buddhas.
Cool. All right. Yeah. And after reading it again, I realized, why I really urged you and encouraged you to get it out there, because it's a solid read. It's a great read.
Thank you.
And I think it's rather unique in the sense I haven't quite read something like that before, which is really quite personal and intimate, but also useful to others who are whether starting on the path or kind of on the path. So to kick things off, you had mentioned at the start that you were in Hawaii at one point, and you actually saw a picture of Master Xu and I think Satya Sai Baba. And then you went to Gold Mountain, and then you saw the picture of Master Xu.
Yes.
I'm curious, do you remember if anyone else had kind of similar experiences with Master Xu's picture? Because I recall I might have heard, but it's a bit vague for me. If there was any connection there to Master Xu's picture, or coming to Gold Mountain, realizing this was the place to be.
Well, for myself, there definitely was. A major influence on me was Xu Yun's picture. If I hadn't seen that picture by just a random stop to get water at a friend's house while I was wandering in Hawaii, I probably never would have thought to take refuge with the Master. In answer to your question, I don't know anybody that was specifically influenced by a picture of Xu Yun.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Because I don't know if maybe I'd read your experience and I thought someone else might have had that, but for myself personally, actually, I first read Master Xu's biography, and at that time I'd been practicing, like maybe Theravada and other stuff like that, but I didn't quite feel the fit. But once I'd read Master Xu's, I was like, this is what I'm looking for. Like, this is the real deal. And that's actually how I found Master Xuanhua, because I was looking for his disciples, because I know he'd passed already.
Oh, okay. I didn't, you see, at the time. And when I walked into Gold Mountain, I saw the picture of Xu Yun on the wall, and I said, "Is that the Master here?"
Yeah.
And they explained to me, no, it wasn't.
Yeah, and that's a perfect segue to the next question, because when you arrived, Master Hua wasn't actually at the monastery.
No.
And apparently he was on a trip to South America.
Right.
Do you... I just asked, because I'm living in South America now, but do you recall at all what the details of his trip was, or
He was on a teaching tour. The Master was on a teaching tour of South America. What was very unusual about my deciding to stay is I was already wandering around for 2 years in India and Nepal. If a teacher wasn't there, I never would stay. I would just go my way. In this instance, as soon as they told me, well, the Master's gone, he won't be back for, I think it was 3 or 4 months.
Yeah, quite a few months.
And I said, can I stay? And they said, yeah. And so I just moved into the Buddha Hall right then. And I never left that Gold Mountain for 3.5 years, and then I moved up here for 7.5. Wow, 7 years. So altogether 10 years with Master Xuanhua.
Yeah, cool. And yeah, you'd mentioned in the book, actually, you just 3 days after arriving at the monastery, you started sleeping sitting up.
Yes.
And you continued it even 3 years after the end of your monastic career.
Until I got married, actually. And then when I got married, I continued sleeping up. When I got married, I was on a milk fast, only milk, and that went on for 6 months.
Wow.
It so happened that I was on that fast when I got married, and I had a pot of boiling milk on the bed, and I was meditating, and my wife was asleep beside it.
Yeah.
And then accidentally, I knocked over the pot of boiling milk, and she leapt out of the bed, and nobody got really seriously burned, but we did. That ended my sitting up.
So what happened? Were you sleep sitting up and kind of like dozed off and hit it, or?
Well, it was about 2 quarts of milk that was freshly boiled and very hot, sitting on the bed, and you just move a bed a little bit and it can tip, and so I guess I didn't fall asleep, but just that was the end of that.
So I'm very curious, like, how did you actually learn to do it at the start? Because I recall some early disciples actually like built crates and stuff like that.
Yeah, when I moved into Gold Mountain, everybody was sleeping sitting up. They did have crates and everything, and I saw everybody sleeping sitting up. I just said to myself on the second or third night there, I'm going to sleep sitting up. Even if I don't sleep, I'm going to sit up. I'm never going to lie down.
Oh, wow.
And I began that very night, and it was a little bit tough, but after that it was easy, and I liked it so much. Even after I left this monastery, I kept sleeping sitting up for 3 years, more than 3 years.
So you pretty much you didn't even use any support, you just went for it.
Yeah, I just went for it. I slept in the Buddha hall with no front and back support.
Yeah.
I usually started in full lotus, and got into it.
Cool.
Yeah, it's a good practice.
Yeah. And what is the actual technique or like instructions for doing it? This is because I've heard Reverend Hung Shaw talk about that there's an actual proper way of doing it. And
there's 3 levels, basically. Yeah. Basically, there's 3 levels. You could invent more, but there's number 1 level, the best, full lotus, no front and back support.
Right.
Number 2 level is back support. Mm-hmm. Number 3 level is side support and back support, and anything beyond that is really downhill. Okay. Those are the 3 real levels.
Yeah.
And then, like the monks that build crate, they had something in front of them to keep their legs from stretching out, because that's considered, kind of sloppy.
Yeah.
But a lot of people do stretch their legs out. So I suppose that would be 4th level.
Right.
But like usually what I did was full lotus and then put my like that.
Yeah. Okay.
And it works. It's good. Okay. You wake up more energetic.
Yeah, that's pretty much the next question. It's like, I mean, what benefits did you experience from that, and like, why did you like it so much?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Well, one thing is when you wake up, you're already up. You don't have to get out of bed. And you do feel a lot more alert when you wake up. Okay. And I've heard some yogis say that actually when your head is vertical with the sky and the planets and everything, you actually connect more with more solar energy and cosmic energy with your head, which makes sense.
Yeah.
When you're lying horizontal, you're not. So
Yes.
there's that yogic view, energy, astrological, cosmic view.
Yeah.
But I just think that it just works somehow, and most of the people that Master himself never laid down.
Yeah.
The people that I've known, I've known quite a few people that did that practice. They all stayed pretty healthy and okay, no problems.
And you mentioned full lotus, so most of you guys back then were doing it in full lotus.
I wouldn't say most. I would say some.
Okay, some would do half lotus.
Yeah, my rule was always start in full lotus, and if you feel like getting in half lotus or easy posture, that's okay too. But always, even meditation, no matter how, even today, I mean, I never meditate without getting in full lotus first, and then if I have some back issues or some problem like hiking too much and my leg is out or something. I'll go into another posture after an hour or two, but usually I always start in full lotus. I think that's a good policy. It's more respectful too, especially in the early beginning part of the meditation. Your hands are usually in, supplication, and it's better to be in full lotus. It's also, basically full lotus posture is the most symmetrical position for the human body as far as energy flow and stability. So there's a lot of pluses for full lotus, but I don't 100% suggest it to anybody, because I lived in the Himalayas, and Sherpas, for instance, typically have real short legs that are extremely strong with really powerful knees. They can't sit in full lotus, and they've been monks all their life, and so body structure has a lot to do with it. I'm long-legged, long-armed. For me, full lotus is natural and easy. So my suggestion for anybody trying to sit in full lotus or wanting to sit in full lotus is to work on it, but never work on it a lot at one time. Like 2-3 minutes at the most. Just guts your way into it, and then as soon as it's painful, release it. And then you will find that over a period of several months, if it's difficult for you, you gradually accustom to it. I've known many people that think, they want to be real aggressive, then they never get it. They wind up getting an injury first, then you really have problems, and then you get discouraged.
Yes. I'm one of those.
Well, you got a good full lotus, I can see.
Yeah, I got injured in other ways and got discouraged through the process. But, but yeah, I'm back at it. Okay, and you also mentioned Tumo.
Tumo.
Master Hua taught it to you, and another Tibetan master 10 years later.
A Tibetan master taught me Tumo.
Did you end up actually practicing it and try it? Did it work?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why not? It's all breath. Tumo. What Master Hua taught me when I had a private meeting with Master Xuanhua, how to generate heat from the abdomen, was almost verbatim what I learned maybe 10 years later when I had a private meeting with Tushik Rinpoche, who was head of the Nyingmapa lineage at the time of his passing in 2012, I think. And he said pretty much the same thing as Master Xuanhua did. It all has to do with the breath, the inner breath. It has nothing to do with anything else. So basically, you don't have to learn Tumo. You can learn it by accident if you're just mindful of your breath and you regulate your breath. The big difference between mindfulness of the breath, like Goenka teaches, and regulation of the breath, which is pranayama. And that distinction is a very important one to know. Yeah.
Well, one is more passive, the other is fully active.
One is pranayama. Exactly.
So I guess because you also had another vow where you wouldn't wear extra clothes or something. With your
that
robes.
was the most difficult vow I kept. Of all.
Yeah, because it gets in the city, it gets insanely cold, and you guys didn't have any heaters or anything.
In TM, it got very, very cold inside the building, usually colder than outside. And I took a vow to wear just one layer of cloth and one, like I have on now, a light t-shirt or something, and a regular pant. And I took that vow to wear those light clothing from the time I woke up at 3:40, because I woke up everybody at TM. I hit the board until I went to sleep, which at 10:30 or 11 at night, I put on regular clothes and bundle up in the blanket and everything. So as soon as I woke up in the morning and got out of my blanket, I was like, it was bitter. I remember sometimes in TM being so cold that I started getting cold on the inside of my stomach.
Wow.
I could feel the cold penetrating in, and probably if I hadn't been practicing meditation, I would have had, what is it, hypothermia? Or is it,
the one when you're too cold.
Yeah.
Your body's freezing.
Yeah, but looking back on it, was a heck of a discipline. A very difficult one, because I kept it at Gold Mountain, and I kept it here, so almost 10 years.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah,
that's impressive, because I came the first time I came here was during the Chanchi Foshi, which is in the winter, and I'm sleeping bag or like heaps of layers and everything. I couldn't handle it. Like the cold was just very.
You learn a lot about your body when you don't wear so many clothes. I mean, even now in the winter, I'm dressed much lighter than anybody here.
Yeah.
You know, much lighter.
Yeah.
Basically, your body, you're more aware of the whole nervous system when you're a little bit cold. The Serfu taught that not to let your legs get cold.
Yeah,
you know?
right.
You can put a blanket on your legs, but it's good to be a little bit cool up above.
The upper body.
Yeah, you're more awake in meditation, more alert. It's noted not just in the Dharma practice, but people in cooler climates tend to live longer, you know, and
That makes sense.
yeah,
Yeah.
be healthier. Your body's forced to metabolize food better.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Builds up the strength, immune system, and stuff like that.
right.
Gotcha. Okay. And I'm guessing the Tumo practice helped a bit too. Sometimes.
Tummo practice helped a little bit.
Yeah.
It's helped me at other times too, like just recently. By recently, I mean about 6-7 years ago.
Yeah.
I went hiking in India, in North India, where His Holiness the Dalai Lama lives, and we went up to a place called Triund. And I was just wearing a light cotton, it's called a kurta. It's what Gandhi used to wear. It's the khadi, it was made of khadi. It's lighter than a t-shirt. And when we got up onto the top, a hailstorm started. You know, we had 6 hours to get down.
Wow.
And I remember being, like my friends had, they were Tibetans, they had their wool robes and stuff.
Yeah.
And one of the Tibetans, I was just so into the hiking and everything, all my clothes were, my t-shirt and my pants were soaking wet. And he's actually an incarnate Lama, Sogan Rinpoche is his name. He's the 7th of the lineage of the Sogans. And he looked at me, he says, "Aren't you cold?" I didn't even think about it. I said, "No." You know, and they're all bundled up, and they have all the, you know, Sogan had on a raincoat and, you know, jackets underneath, and I was just soaking wet. And I didn't even think about it until he asked that. He says, "Aren't you cold?" I said, "No." And so, yeah, I guess it helps. Sometimes you don't know that you're actually even doing it.
Oh wow.
You know,
That's awesome.
You habituate to it. Yeah.
When you shared that story, I just remembered like when Master Hua, when in his early days in Manchuria, it had snow,
That's
and
serious cold.
He wouldn't wear like shoes or something and just walk in the snow.
Well, he also wore the light cotton like a Milarepa. Same thing like Milarepa, one cotton cloth.
Yeah.
And so he'd do that in serious cold. You know, there's a story of the master getting into a cart. You know the story about him hitching a ride with a farmer with a cart was going to town, and Sherpa got in the back. They said, "Get in the back." He was young. He was still a teenager. And so he sat in meditation in the back, and it was like 40 or 50 below, like gets in Manchuria. And the farmers looked in the back, and he's sitting in meditation. They thought he froze to death. Do you remember that story?
I think so, yeah. It's stunning to come
But
back.
Sherfu, like, that's really the Tumo fire. That's beyond my level, right, for sure. I know very little bit about it. I know something about regulation of breath, but not that kind of level of Tumo fire. Yeah, the people that really practice it well, I'm sure you know, you can be in like
in the snow, and they got the like
and
heat melting.
Yeah, that's a different level. Yeah, very different level than I know anything about.
Cool.
I have no idea about any of that.
Okay.
That you have to have a certain level of purity, which I don't have.
I'm sure you do. Okay. The next question is also practice related. It's actually fasting. So I'll run through the protocol just to make sure it's correct, and this is from your book.
Okay.
You mentioned there's 4 important periods, like or lengths: 18 days, 36, 72, and 108 days.
Yeah.
You mentioned 3 days before fasting, you actually eat 3 golf-sized wheat balls.
Yeah.
Is that per day?
And no water.
And no water. Are those golf balls like? Do you have it one day, like the first day for one?
No, 3 per day.
3 per day. Okay.
And those little balls are the size of a golf ball, and they're made with flour and as little water as you can to make it into a ball and hold together.
Yeah.
So there's hardly any water in it.
Yeah.
And the purpose of that is that you get in your gut a ball of wheat.
Yep.
You know, that's constipates you.
Oh.
And
okay.
then when you enter your fast, that's what the little parasites, natural bacteria in your stomach will live off of.
Right.
So when you enter the fast, you try not to go to the bathroom as long as you can.
Yeah. Like take a poo, take a shit.
Yeah, not to do that.
Yeah.
And so you can see how long you can go.
Yeah.
You know, so it's not easy.
Do you know what the idea or concept is behind that? Like why?
Yeah,
why,
I just told you.
No. As in like why not? Like poo just so the parasites stay
that's
alive?
the sole reason for that is because it gives one of the problems with fasting is that your bacteria, natural bacteria die because there's no food.
Yeah.
Then when you put your fast and you want to eat, you don't have the natural bacteria to digest the food.
Okay. Gotcha.
You know, natural organisms. So that's to prevent that, so that you have all of the necessary for digestion after the fast. That's the whole science behind it.
Okay, so not to poo is because then you lose the wheat balls, and then.
Well, even if you lose even if you take a poo, those wheat balls at least help you for up to that point, and then there's still something that's there, that remains, and you're taking very little water on the fast.
Yes.
So there's not a big, you're going to have something in there anyway.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
Very important.
That's good to clarify,
That's a very important aspect of the fast, that preliminary.
Okay. And it's you mentioned the first 7 days of the fast is no water at all.
No water for the first 7 days. That's the most difficult part.
That sounds crazy. And then after that 7 days, then you get 12 ounces of water.
Yeah.
Which I, converted to 350 milliliters, which is then like about 1.5 cups of water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is very, very difficult. Much more difficult than not eating food.
Yeah.
Much more. We had we would carry around a spoon and just have a spoonful of water every few hours, because the 12 ounces doesn't go very far. So you don't gulp it down. You take a spoonful every now and then. It's difficult, and I kept it strictly. I don't know if everyone did.
Right.
But at least on my 36 days fast, I was very strict.
Yep. And then the last one was, when you end the fast, no solid food for 3 days, just kanji and porridge.
That's what they said, but I blew that off. I broke one fast with a whole jar of peanut butter.
That was a later question. Like, what actually happened there?
I was fine, but
you're fine.
I was fine. Yeah. I mean, I wasn't supposed to do that, but that's what I craved, and I just went for it.
You just smashed the whole jar.
But I wouldn't recommend it. But it's a lot safer than some things. Like, for example, if you break a fast like that with grape juice or something. Or apple juice or apples, it can be very dangerous because of the sugar content.
Okay.
But peanut butter doesn't have a lot of sugar, it's hard to digest, and has a lot of problems that way, but it's not going to send your body into shock like some things can that have a lot of sugar, like a fruit juice.
Right.
So typically you avoid that. You break a fast like that with a rice gruel or something less.
Yeah, something much lighter.
Yeah.
How long was that fast? The one with the peanut butter?
I think that was one of the 36 days fast, but all of my fasts I didn't break according to the book. None of them.
But you're okay, so that's all good. Did anyone attempt 108 days?
No.
No.
Even I didn't make my 72. I technically quit at 68 days. Hongguan made 72.
Yeah. So you guys were the only ones who attempted 72?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I recall, I think the other main one, maybe Lai Fasha, Heng Lai.
He didn't do the 72.
Not 72, but he would fast as well. Like maybe the 18.
Heng Lai did a 36-day fast, an 18-day fast. I don't know what else he did.
Yeah, okay. Was it mainly you three that did the fasting, or was it others?
There was Hung Chur, Bhikshuni Hung Chur did an 18-day, and a couple of the Bhikshunis fasted.
Oh, okay.
And it was a couple of people that like I think his name is Hong Wu. He fasted during the 18-day fast, but after 7 days he quit that. He couldn't take it.
Yeah.
It's not for everybody.
Yeah, I've had limited experience fasting, but I think there was one retreat that I did, I don't know, maybe like 5, 6, or 7 days, and I recall it got a lot easier after the 5th or 6th day.
That's because your mechanism gets used to not having food, and your hunger kind of calms down, and your body gets used to the whole thing. That's why I don't recommend, like some people do, a tea fast, a juice fast.
Right.
This is really disingenuous, and the reason is because any kind of food that goes into your system when you're fasting triggers your body to think it's getting a meal.
Right.
So everything starts to digest and everything, and it just drains a lot of energy, and they're not putting any food there.
Right.
So it's a lot easier just to do a water fast than it is a juice fast. You think, oh, I want to do a juice fast because it's easier, but it's not. It's much more difficult. Yeah.
So
unless you're doing it for health reasons.
Right.
Now, I went on I went on 2 fasts for health reasons. One I just mentioned, 6 months of milk, and the other one was a grape juice and grape fast.
Yeah.
And I went on that for well over a month, maybe a couple or 3 months, and that was a cancer cure that I went on.
Oh, okay.
And it became very famous. It was illegal in the United States, but there was a lady named Brandt who did that, had a clinic in Mexico where people would go in and they just gave everything that has to do with grapes, grape juice, grapes, raisins, but nothing else. And she was allegedly curing people.
Okay.
And there's a book called The Grape Cure by Brandt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So that was very good. Actually, it worked. It was pretty good. I didn't have any issues at the time, health issues, but I liked the fast.
Yeah. Okay. And yeah, I kind of brought that up because I'm just like curious, like on these longer fasts.
Yeah.
Does it stay easy, or I'm sure it ebbs and flows in difficulty, or?
Well, actually, that's a good question. It's not so difficult as maybe some people might imagine. Hung Guan was totally amazing. He went to the bank and was doing business right up to the end of his fast.
Okay, wow.
And he even told me one time he went in the bank and the teller saw him and she just was shocked. She just looked at him and she almost fainted. I lost 100 pounds, and Hung Guan, I got really thin.
Yeah.
And but my main problems, if I had any at all, was after the fast, because when I started eating food, my body wasn't as strong as I thought it was. I got up and I fell down sometimes, because I thought I was strong enough just to get up off the floor, and then I'd get up and I'd fall down, because I didn't recognize, I thought I was as strong as I normally
before,
am. So sometimes afterwards it can be a little difficult. And I remember one time at TM when Hung Guan was towards the end of his 72-day fast. It was like about midnight, and we were on opposite corners of TM. And I was meditating, and somehow I thought about Hung Guan and just let it go, and thought about him again, and I just let it go. And I thought, maybe he's coming into my mind for some reason. So it was about midnight, so I walked over to his room, and he was standing there, perfectly straight, his eyes open, and he didn't know anything, what was happening. I said, Hung Guan didn't phase. He was just, I don't know where he was, so I just put him by the shoulders, sat him down in a chair, and left him. So he was obviously very spaced out. But yeah, Hung Guan, he was really exemplified great fasting, because he kept right up to the end, and he carried on the master's business and everything while he was fasting.
Yeah, that's crazy. That was a follow-up question. It's like, Yeah, were you guys just like primarily meditating while you're fasting? But it sounds like Hung Guan was still
No,
doing
Hung
daily
Guan was
activities.
doing all his regular. I permanently meditated,
Yeah.
but Hung Guan had a different role in the monastery than me. I had no role really to play except be in the Buddha hall and run ceremonies once in a while and chant sessions. But Hung Guan was taking care of all the monastery business and everything,
Wow.
and he carried everything on, and during his fast. But we were all trained that the fast is easier if you can keep doing stuff as much as you can.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah, because your mind, a lot of it's mental,
Yeah.
and if you remain alert and don't baby yourself, you're better off.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
Hung Guan and I both stood, we had a custom of standing up for the entire lecture of Shifu.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an hour and a half every night.
Yeah.
And then there's an hour before that of ceremonies.
Yeah.
So Hung Guan and I continued
Right.
standing up on each side of
Yeah.
Shifu.
Like 3 hours.
Yeah,
at least.
for the entire period of our fast. We didn't quit that.
What was the impetus behind the hour and a half for Shifu's lecture? You guys didn't want to fall asleep, or?
So Hung Guan started that. Hung Guan and I were on opposite ends of Shifu when Shifu lectured.
Uh-huh.
Hung Guan was on the one side of the Buddha hall, I was on the other, and then
Yeah.
there was a whole row of people on each side
Yeah.
that would listen to the lectures. And I kept nodding off, and Hung Guan nodded off. So Hung Guan started standing up because he was nodding off, and then one day I nodded off,
Yeah.
and then Shifu, I didn't know it, but like Shifu pointed his finger like a gun and shot me, and then and all of a sudden I woke up and everybody was laughing. I didn't know why, and then Shifu said, "Where were you?" And I said, "Paisley land," and then Shifu was saying they went frantic trying to translate Paisley
Right.
into Chinese.
Right.
And then from that moment on, I said to myself, "Going to stand up." So Hung Guan and I were on each side of Shifu.
Right.
I can see his face to this day because he'd always look at me while seeing who's going to blink first, And like every time I look over, he's staring at me, So we both did that for years,
Wow.
And it was good practice. I still, if I get tired when I'm meditating, I still stand up.
Yeah.
Even now,
Yeah.
I'll stand for an hour or so just
Yeah,
to
and
get
then
my
just
practice.
keep meditating.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. If you have trouble sleeping, the best thing to do is stand up.
Yeah.
Many times as a young monk, when novice monk, Shifu's room was across from mine. He'd come into my room. He'd see me standing up, meditating. He loved it. I could tell he really liked it. He'd circumambulate me while I was standing. Yeah.
And I mean, I guess I'm curious, like, what effects did you notice from the fasting, especially like prolonged? Because when I did it, especially getting after the difficult period, for me it was just like the mind was so much clearer, and then you just didn't have the energy to think as much, so you don't have so much focused thoughts, and
Yeah.
the body felt a lot more flexible and open.
I think all of those things is true.
Yeah.
Yeah. But keep in mind, we weren't doing our fast for health. We were doing it because there's so much conflict in the world and stuff. In fact, Hung Guan and I did one of our fasts in Seaward Park in Seattle.
Yeah.
And we were outside for 18 days. And we did our first fast out there.
Oh, okay.
I think that was the first one.
Yeah.
Yeah, we fasted for 18 days in the park. And I don't remember if Hung Guan was on that fast or not. But all of our fasts were for world peace. All of them. So that's part of the reason we actually survived them. Because motivation is everything. Like if you're going to fast for health, 10 days, 7 days is the max. If you're going to fast for another reason, like Gandhi did his fast, then there's really no limit. What you can do, but you're also kind of protected because your motivation is clear. So if you're doing it for health, you're going to start having doubts about, well, is this really healthy? After 5 or 6 days, you're going to think, is this okay?
No, that's great context, because I had no idea that was the...
As soon as you start doubting yourself, you're in trouble with the fast. And it's easy to doubt yourself if you're going into a fast for health reasons. Because for health reasons, 3 to 7 days is really the best. Or even 1 day.
Okay. Thanks for that clarification. You mentioned in the book Master Hua had bamboo sticks with disciples.
Yeah.
He just draw it out, and then the person would have to spontaneously lecture on the Dharma or say something related.
Right.
Do you have any memorable stories from that? Like whether it's you or other disciples or?
Well, I don't remember who got called or anything, but I do remember that. Well, it's a good question, because one of the things that the master always taught is not to rehearse anything.
Yeah.
You know, he liked you to be spontaneous, and so like, he you know, if he asked you to talk, you didn't know what he's going to say, talk about. You had to talk, and so you didn't know who was going to get pulled in those bamboo sticks. But what I always got, like, because I cleaned the altar, you know, and I cleaned around where Shifu lectured. That was my kind of like what I liked to do in the monastery, keep the Buddha hall clean. And so I always would see those bamboo sticks, and Shifu would always be on the altar, and he says, if anybody takes out one stick, I'll know it, you know. And I was very tempted a few times to take out a stick to see, but I never did. But I know he would have known it somehow. So I never fooled around like that, but I'd look at those sticks, it was tempting.
It's tempting.
Yeah. But he did pull those sticks out, and you had to say something about the Dharma.
Yeah.
But it illustrates what he, like, if you're going to talk the Dharma, like Dharma Master Hung Sure, I don't think he rehearses his lectures, you know, he just, you know, one day, for example, 3 years ago, or 4 years ago, I was driving security here, and I saw Hung Sure with his camera. I was just taking pictures. So I hadn't seen him in a while, so I said, hello, what are you doing? He said, oh, I'm taking pictures. I said, oh, good. He said, what else are you up to? He says, well, in about 10 minutes I have to give a talk in, you know, DRBU.
Yeah.
So that kind of says the same thing, like here he is taking pictures, and most people would be looking through notes, you know, but he's kind of separating his mind from the whole thing, and then he has to give his lecture.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's the way the master taught everybody that was close to him. Not everybody follows that. A lot of people, they over-prepare, and that's why their lectures are terrible.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting distinction, because I recall, at least last time I was here, and what I've seen here so far, you know, when people go up to the Buddha Hall to lecture or talk, it's all prepared. Like, I did a talk last time I was here. I fully prepared everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I found out about this, you know, the more spontaneous approach afterwards.
That's how you learn. You see, if you're going to lecture, you want to come from the heart, and you want people to feel you're coming from the heart. And if you're, and you learn better what you know. If you just, you know, it's better to make mistakes and everything.
Then you actually really learn, because you're like, oh, I shouldn't have said that. I was like, that's the wrong thing.
Yeah, and people don't follow you if you're just reading from a script, you know.
Yeah, for sure. It's the same for, like, say, TED presentations or stuff like that, like formal corporate presentation. The ones that seem to go off the cuff come across a whole lot better.
You have to know your material.
Yeah.
I think some people really genuinely have a problem, you know. So there's some people you can kind of forgive for doing that, you know. That's just the way they are.
Yeah.
But I think 80% of the people could just, you know, go over the material really well, kind of get an idea what you want to say, and then say it. And a lot of times here, you know, like if it's my turn to lecture, and I've already, you know, I've gone over it too many times in my mind, and it's my turn to lecture, and I'm circumambulating the Buddha before the thing. Sometimes I'll change my topic right as I'm walking up the stage and just talk about anything that comes to mind. Yeah. But if I feel like I've thought about it too much, you know,
okay,
you know, mentally rehearsed it unintentionally.
Yeah.
And
Okay. Cool. The next part. This is actually a quote from the book. He said that the way-place environment created by the master would mold conditions that reviewed the issues people had, while the master allowed the environment to do its work. Yeah, when I read that kind of hit me, because I've spent some time at different Master Hua's monasteries, and it definitely feels like that. And I've heard others jokingly call the city of 10,000 Buddhas the city of 10,000 afflictions. Yeah, and it just came to mind, like, you also mentioned in the book, when it comes to these things, like, you have to face these issues head on, not really shy away or be, and because the way the environment's constructed, it's like all these things get dredged up that you have to face, or you run away?
Yeah, that's true with meditation in general, and it's a kind of it's a major, most important, common reason for people to quit meditation, because they expect, happy faces and everything going good. But actually, when I talk to people and they say, oh, they love meditation so much, and they're beginners, and they say I love it and everything, I know they're not practicing right.
Right.
And if somebody tells me, I feel so afflicted, I never felt so terrible in my life, I'm going to throw in the towel, and then I know they're meditating correctly.
Right.
Yeah, you're doing it right. That's the sign. If they're all happy faces and I love meditation right away, I know that's incorrect, because you're not supposed to like it. You got all of these background afflictions, you're supposed to be able to look at them.
Yeah.
So the good thing about being with a Chan master like Shifu is he would put them in your face all the time. He would bring them up. It was like walking around eggshells all the time. If you want to be around the master, and get anywhere, you have to be like if he asks you to do one thing, you do 10 things. If he asks you to meditate 1 hour, you meditate 2. It's like a person told me about surfing. He says, if you're thinking about walking 2 feet towards the nose of the board, walk 3.
Right.
It's like just go a little bit extra. Push yourself, and then the master will work on you more.
Gotcha.
So one of the great things about being around Shifu is he'd push you as much as you could be pushed. Mm-hmm. If you didn't want to be pushed, he'd pull the reins a little bit, and not push it to you over the brink. But he'd push you as far as he could.
Yeah.
But he was very skilled to know how much he could push you. Mm-hmm. Not everybody could be pushed too much.
Yeah.
So it'd be kind of easier on some people than others.
Right.
But what he wouldn't work on at all is, if you didn't work at all, he wouldn't work on you.
Yeah.
So he just ignored you.
Yeah.
So
it's not worth the effort.
You're not. Like Christ said, what do you say? Don't cast your pearls amongst fools, or swine.
Right.
Because you're just going to waste your effort.
Yeah, and he's only got so limited time and energy, and he's got so many.
He's got a lot of disciples.
Yeah, he's got a lot of disciples.
He's distributed over so many people.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, and the next question, it's also paraphrasing. You said maybe at least half of the early disciples of monastics of the master went on to lead conventional lives.
Right.
Did you notice any common patterns or reasons why people left the monastic life and kind of left the community?
Yeah, that's a good question. For different reasons, like a lot of people left after many years.
Right.
It's not like they came in and then they were a monk for a year or 2 and they left.
Yeah.
Even people that had relatively short periods of monastic careers, like I found out recently, Randall Peterson. I thought he was a monk a year or 2, but he was a monk for 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
Hung Shou was a monk for 7 years. Mm-hmm. And, I don't know about all the others, but even people that, left after a short period, that short period wasn't like a month or 2. It was after being a bhikshu for a while.
Yeah.
So you have to consider, like typically in China, people didn't stay with the master for more than 10 years.
Yep.
If you didn't leave, the master told you to leave and go to so-and-so. Just like, the Youth Goodwill, Sudana.
Right.
The master would work with you for a while and say, I can't teach you anymore.
Go to the next person. Yeah.
Go to the next person. So a lot of people that were with the master for 7 years, or 5 years, or 3 years, and myself for 10, I just figured I got as much as I can, and I'm not going to get any more,
Yeah.
So that's why a lot of people left. They figured, well, I'm not going to learn anymore in this environment.
Right.
And some went on to Hong Chan, for example, and a few others started own monasteries elsewhere.
Yeah.
And they remained monks, and they're still monks. Others just disrobed. I found that that's what I did. So, and some maintain a real practice as if they were still at the monastery, even though they disrobed.
Yep.
And got into family life and so forth, like Hong Shou, Fred Clare.
And like yourself.
And others kind of got into another career altogether. For example, our master Hong Chi, after I don't know how many years he was here, probably 15 or 20.
That's Paul Hop.
Yeah. So he studied music, got a music degree, and started teaching. So he started a whole teaching career. So that's the way he pursued his growth, spiritual growth, and it's great because teaching is phenomenal. So, I think in answer to your question, people maybe half left, but they absorbed what they could, and then they left. Yeah. It's not that they left because they weren't benefiting.
Yeah.
It's like you graduate from Harvard.
Gotcha.
It's over.
Yeah. On to the next thing.
Yeah, you don't stay there and say, well, I think I'll garden or something now.
Yeah.
Maybe you would,
And it's a bit of a side question, but Hung Yo, that was Hung Ju's bowing Dharma protector. I think you mentioned in the book he became a big shot in the New York art scene.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Did you stay in touch with him at all, or
I didn't stay in touch with him, but apparently he got the name. He got a nickname in the art world that he was a play on the word yo.
Oh, okay.
Like yo-yo or something. And who ran into him? Like Randall Peterson was in New York, in Manhattan.
Yeah.
And he just happened to run into him, and he asked him what he was doing. He says, "Oh, I'm doing the art." He says, "Just ask anybody who Hung Yo or Yo-Yo or whatever the new name he took up was, and then they'll know." They know me, and Randall said, yeah, everybody kind of like in the art world, whatever, knew him. He was kind of a groover, and now he's in Honolulu.
Now he's in Honolulu?
Yeah, and he has a son that looks just like him.
Wait, do you mean like now?
Yeah.
So you did like meet up with him or something, or how do you know this?
I know because somebody posted a picture of his son on Facebook.
Oh. And
that was Hong Ju's daughter that posted that picture.
Okay.
And so she got in contact with him.
Oh, so he's still alive?
Yeah.
Okay, because actually Reverend Hung Shou a while back, he was like, if anyone knows, or like where he is or how to contact him.
Yeah, everybody wants to know, but he's very much incognito. He doesn't want anybody from this organization to contact him.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
But his son, I saw a picture a few years ago when he was about 12 or 13. He looks exactly like him. Exactly like him.
Cool. And the next
their trip was unbelievable.
Yeah. I think I remember reading the 3 Steps One Bow journal from them, and that was
unbelievable. That trip was an unbelievably difficult trip.
Yeah, because Hung Ju is pretty gung ho as well.
He's amazing.
The next question is related to this aspect of Dharma in everything and the ordinary.
Yeah.
So I guess my question related to that is like, I can understand this from the context of like, if you're doing ordinary activities for the monastery, that's very clear and distinct, but like outside of that, how does one make that the Dharma? I kind of asked this question because I caught up with a friend recently that works in marketing. Well, he's also a cultivator, and he mentioned, he would have to do like PowerPoint presentations or stuff like that, but he's like, what's the Dharma like related to that? Because he's just like, he's mainly doing the job for, to make a living.
Yeah, so first of all, there's nothing like a way place to really work on yourself, But if you're not in a way place,
right,
which is the reality of the world, a lifestyle that's harmless, completely harmless, is a way of practice. It can become a way of practice, and you can discipline yourself within the context of a work environment. So like you can segment off your life in certain ways, like if you're involved in stocks, like I was for a while, for 7 or 8, 10 years, the markets opened before my meditation time in New York, so that would pretty much the morning meditation had to be moved back so I could trade stocks
Right.
and wheel and deal in that realm. And then when I did my trading, after an hour or two, I would meditate.
Yep.
You know, I kept up an 8 hour a day at least practice all my life, you know, from the time I left here. So, and I'm not saying that or suggesting that you have to do that. For example, people that don't want to meditate after work or whatever, you can practice the Dharma in other ways. You know, like you can, like some of the great lay supporters of Buddhism, you know, they support monasteries, they build schools, they do various other beneficial things with their wealth.
Yep.
If everybody was a monk, everybody would be poor. You know, so you have people that work and wheel and deal and they make money, and they support those that are sitting around, you know, with their bowl of food. So
in the Buddha hole.
it all kinds of balances out. But I just have to say that one time I asked Tusha Rinpoche directly, and he knows my wife and my children and myself for decades.
Yeah.
And he's the closest master as Shifu was to me. You know, Shifu is my root teacher, and Tusha Rinpoche I knew even before Shifu.
Yeah.
And I asked him one time, I said, is it possible that myself as a lay person now with the family and everything can progress as much as I would progress if I were to remain a monk? He answered with one word. You know what it is? No. And it was a no that was a real no. Right. You know, right from his enlightened mind, you know. And I didn't ask any further. So, yeah, no elaboration.
Right. Okay, cool. No, that definitely answers that. I think. Yeah, it's just working with the conditions you have, and also, molding your lifestyle and context so you incorporate Dharma into it some way.
Yeah, it helps if you have a strong practice, you know, which luckily, due to Master Xuanhua, I had a strong practice when I left here.
Yep.
So, like, I've run into people that are very close friends, family friends, and that were very connected with Buddhism before. Like one woman I know very well, when she had her child, her first child, I knew she was a great practitioner before she had her child. So I asked her one day, I said, are you still doing your practice? You know, she was a disciple of Karmapa, and she says, my son is my practice.
Right.
You know, so you see, this is a classic kind of mistake that people make. They say, well, I work now, so I can't practice. But I remember, well, I don't want to go into details, but in my own life, so many times I made a choice after work or whatever I was doing. You know, are you going to practice or are you going to go relax? Right. You know, which could be getting together with friends, having a coffee, all of this stuff. And, you know, I just cut through it. Sit in meditation. You may not have a lot of friends doing that, but, you know.
Yeah, you got to make the sacrifices.
You got to make your sacrifices. Well, but also after a while you start loving it.
Yeah.
You know,
it just becomes a choice, really. You see it more as a choice than a sacrifice.
It becomes a way of life. You know, it's kind of funny, like, you know, like if you really nurture your practice and build a personal practice, it may be difficult for a year or 2 or 3 years, nurturing your practice. It's called a personal practice, you know, like you show up for yourself. But after a while, you know, it starts really nurturing you, and you get pulled into it, and you get support in that lifestyle. So it's not like you're giving up anything. It's like you're really taking the opportunity. It's like a great opportunity to practice. And so people that are lay people that really keep a practice going, they can surpass a monk very easily. That's a little lazy.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things I think is very important for lay people to understand, and for monastics to understand, in the sense of not being dismissive of lay people, because a lay person that works in his practice, and I've known some really great lay practitioners, never would mix, they can surpass easily a monk that is not doing the work he should be. You know?
Yeah, I'm great you, it's great you bring up that point, because I noticed that was actually emphasized quite a bit in the book as well. And there are some serious lay practitioners with deep understanding.
Yeah, you have to really be careful, you know? Yeah, you have to be very careful. I myself have a problem with a dismissive attitude towards people, you know, and like I kind of I see it in my own psychology, you know, that I kind of sometimes have that problem, and I really know better, but still it's so deeply ingrained when you're a practitioner to look down on non-practitioners.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So, you have to be, as a lay person, you know, the Dharma is everywhere. So if you realize that, and Fred Hung Shou, he demonstrated that extremely well, because here's a person that had like his 5 eyes, 6 faculties all opened up. He knew past lives of himself, of other people, and you know, clairvoyant, everything. He never lost it after he left here. And he never stopped practicing one single day. You know.
Yeah, that's really impressive.
Yeah, it's very impressive. That's because he loved the Dharma. You know, like he even told me, he says, you know, I have to cut my work down because I want to. The Avatamsaka, I got to study the Avatamsaka.
Wow.
And, you know, he enters samadhis, you know, every night. You know, so he says it takes time. You know, and like he recites, you know, when he recites the Dabe Jo, which was one of his main practices, you know, 21 times will take him an hour and a half. I can do it in 10 minutes. You know, so he recites and really enters a deep state of identity with Avalokiteshvara. So, you know, these kind of practices are extraordinary, and a layperson can do these practices. It's not, you know, the Dharma is, I always say that Dharma is an equal opportunity employer. You're too young to remember that, but there was a General Electric ad that, on TV that used to say, we're an equal opportunity employer. So one time I made a T-shirt that said, the Buddha is an equal opportunity employer.
Which is true. Cool. And the next question I had in mind, and this is something you also really, at least to me, it seemed like you really strongly emphasized as well as a main point in the book, and I also relate to a lot, was you really emphasized path-driven and not results-driven. And you said the Master Heart actually kept you guys busy to keep you on that path. And I guess so you don't have much post-thinking, and you know.
Exactly. You know, like one of the great things about being with an enlightened master is they're enlightened. You know, they know the nature of mind, and they can see where your thinking is going wrong. You know, they can see that if you're looking for results from being a meditator or whatever, and they can undermine that. Now, Sherpa undermined it really ingeniously by having us do simple things like carpentry or something, or cleaning a Buddha hall, and he'd point out, well, you're not mindful. And so you start thinking, well, mindfulness is not about meditation, it's about remembering where you put this broom and where you put that soap, and not getting confused, like walking into a room and saying, why did I come into this room? You know, so the master was a master at teaching you to be mindful in ordinary affairs. So he kind of brought it all down home, so that, you know, you're not thinking about, like Hung Shou with all these extraordinary visions and everything. You're thinking, well, I can't even clean a Buddha hall with mindfulness, or clean the toilets with mindfulness without spacing out. I cannot even clean the dishes without forgetting where I, you know, put my sponge or something. There's these lapses of mindfulness. If these are happening in ordinary affairs, simple affairs of life, then they're happening in meditation too, because the meditation
Right,
mirrors,
yeah.
the world mirrors your meditation.
Right.
So the master, his genius was, he didn't confine meditation to the Buddha Hall. He made you aware that ordinary activities is also meditation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, something he never really got through my thick skull as much as he would have liked to. I know that.
Right.
But most people were really good. All of his disciples kind of really got it, that, you know, they realized by ordinary affairs how weak their discipline of mindfulness was. They didn't need to sit in meditation to realize. And Shifu would sit there to mirror. Shifu was just uncanny the way he worked. Like, you wash dishes 300 days in a year, you never break a dish. Mm-hmm. He never comes in to see you washing dishes. The one day you drop a dish, all this, you're looking at the dish, and then he shows up. And then he just kind of smiles and walks away. And everything was like that with him, because you do things 1,000 times correctly. The one time you don't, he's there. You know? And so he really, you know, he was always kind of like, I always said about Shifu that he was like a puppet in the Buddha's hands. Yeah. Often Shifu, I'm positive he had no idea of the effect that he was having on people, you know, like showing up at, you know, inopportune times for you, you know, like it was just when you didn't want to see him. You want to see him 24 hours a day, you want to be with him, but like there's 1 minute or something you don't want, and then there he is, you know. So I always think of Shifu, he's like in the Buddha's hands, you know, like a puppet, because he didn't do anything deliberately. It was like as the Taoists might say, the Tao was working through him. Yeah. So he didn't think consciously, I'm going to check and see if, you know, Hong Kong is meditating in his room, you know, or if he's sleeping or something. He never thought like that. Shifu never thought to entrap people. You know, that's called entrapment, you know. Right. So like he just had an uncanny way, and it just like he was just such a perfect mirror of all your faults, but he did it in a way that was like so unintentional that it was just coming from
the way the Tao unfolding spontaneous. Okay. And Master Hua at one point mentioned that out of all his disciples, you were the one who had the least problems with sexual desire. Yeah,
he said that in the dining hall one day.
Yeah,
it was true, probably.
Yeah. So my question is like, is it that you didn't struggle necessarily that much with it, or did you consciously work on it that it got to that point?
No, I just as soon as I became a disciple of Shifu, I forgot all about sex. You know, I just thought it was, you know, I was so just sort of totally into practice and Shifu that I never thought about it. Not even like Hong Guan and some other people really had a problem with it, you know. I know, you know, and they were open about it too, you know, like struggling with it. Yeah. And as soon as I became close to Shifu, I forgot all about it, you know, completely, 100%. I didn't even know what, you know, sex was and what my friends, you know, my fellow monks were struggling with, you know. And so, like, I don't know why the master brought it up, but one day in the dining hall, you know, he just said that. He just said it, you know, he said, all my disciples, the one that has the least problem with sexual desire is Hong Kong. And it was really true, you know. I had no problem.
That's why
I never even thought about it, you know.
That's why.
And then what was weird is, you know, like I never thought about it, and then I left here as a monk, and I went to Nepal, and after about 2 years in Nepal teaching Tibetan monks English and living in monasteries, one day I just noticed sexual desire coming on. You know, I felt it. It was like the strangest thing. It was like all of a sudden, you know, a new feeling was coming on to me. And
well, that's quite foreign.
It was quite very foreign, and I thought to myself, okay, you gotta be careful not to break the precepts of the bhikshu. So I contacted a Tibetan monk I know, and I told him that I'm going to have to return to lay life, and he introduced me to the abbot of a monastery, and I formally gave my robes back. And then about 2 weeks later, I met my wife.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You mentioned one part in the book, directing sexual energy through yoga of mind.
What's that?
Directing sexual energy through yoga of mind.
Yeah, that's.
Could you speak more on that, or like maybe
Yeah,
explain that,
like
or-
in a way, in some sense, like, you know, having strong sexual desire and even strong anger,
right.
or any strong negative emotion,
Mm-hmm.
is actually better than not having it if you have good instructions. Because, and the reason is that all sexual energy, or I mean hatred, anger, jealousy, all negative emotions,
Yep.
and all like love of animals, emotional love towards people, desires that are considered positive, positive desires, envisioning yourself, giving away wealth and doing good things for people, all of these positive thoughts that you might have, they all rise from a neutral energy,
Right.
They don't come from different sources,
Okay.
It's just like you can take a little fire and light your room on fire, like I did in my room by mistake, by having peacock feathers fall into the altar and light the room on fire. Or you can have a fire that cooks your food, but it's the same fire.
Yep.
It's coming from the same source.
Right.
So a person like that has a negative energy, it could be even an inferiority complex for them. They feel inferior to everything. It really makes them depressed and stuff. If they can understand that that's coming from the same source as maybe somebody with a lot of self-esteem and a
Confidence.
go-getter and really a wheeler and dealer, shaker and mover, that kind of person. You have another person that's really down on himself, and feels inferior and everything. The source of that energy, that for both of those emotions, negative and so-called positive emotions, are both the same.
Yeah.
And like the people that have, like super, that have positive emotions, like, they feel real kind to everybody and all of this. Then another person's really down on everybody, hates everybody. That's energy. Everything is energy.
Yeah.
So if you have strong feelings of any kind, whether positive or negative, and like in meditation, you should always seek out the energy. Where is the source? What's empowering that? And then understanding it's neutral.
Right.
The energy itself is neutral. Where it goes is up to you, up to your practice.
Yeah.
So if you have like strong energy, negative energy, you can bring that negative energy down into really neutralizing it,
Right.
and then direct it into to a visualization about the star, whatever you want to do with it. And
Right,
once it's
right.
neutral,
Okay.
it's like, and if you have like a lot of people are real bubbly, but it's a kind of the opposite of a negative, angry attitude.
Yep.
A lot of people have the opposite. They have like a real bubbly attitude.
Right.
And they inquire, "Oh, how are you?
Yeah.
Dear, are you doing okay? Are you
Yeah.
fine?" And that's also energy. It's actually it's the same. It's a kind of a negative energy, actually. Its manifestation is kind of like a positive. Oh, hello, how are you? And very bubbly and everything. But it's arising from the same source as the anger. So if you have that kind of energy, whatever it is, positive, what appears positive, what appears negative, is always neutral. What appears, the manifestation is always
Yeah. So it sounds like you kind of recommend or mean that through meditation or whatever, you can trace back the source of
exactly
that thought or desire or emotion closer to that neutral state.
Who does it belong to? Ask yourself.
Right.
Who does the strong sexual desire belong to? Who is the owner of the strong sexual desire?
Yeah.
Okay. Does it belong to someone you know? No.
No.
Does it belong to anyone other than me? No. Who am I? Apart from this, if it belongs to me, then obviously I'm the owner of something that's external to myself, or it wouldn't belong to me. So that thing is one thing, I'm something else. Who am I aside from this sexual desire I experience?
Right.
So that leads you to separate from owning, being the possessor of sexual desire.
Yes.
So once you get really good at that, you completely disown sexual desire.
Gotcha.
So obviously, if you have small sexual desire, like I did, it's more difficult than if you have real strong sexual desire to get to that point, because a person like myself wouldn't recognize it so obviously in his psyche, mind.
Yeah.
So if you have really strong sexual desire, you say, okay, who does it belong to? Well, obviously, it belongs to me. Well, then I'm possessor of something that is obviously separate from me.
Right.
Who am I independent of that sexual desire? So you see it more clearly if you have strong sexual desire, you know, then that leads you to increase the gap between yourself and the desire until you separate it from it altogether. And that transforms into a real positive, can transform a real positive energy.
Kind of flipped it. Like you've what do you call, like, transmuted that
turnaround states. It's called the turning of states.
You know, fiction to Bodhi.
Yeah, it's turning samsara into enlightenment. You know, Sherpa would usually talk around turning around states. You know, turning states around. So you're not turned by the state. So, but if you're turned by the state and you understand what's happening, having strong negative emotion can be very powerful. The school that makes the most use of it and is the tantric school,
right?
You know, which is the most misunderstood of all Buddhist schools, because you know most tantric practitioners are celibate. One thing, but it's the art of turning negative emotions into positive. But naturally, it's great if you have a great teacher too, because obviously, if you've got strong sexual desire, it can backfire if you don't know what you're doing, because you know you're deliberately bringing up sexual energy. You know, you're looking at it. So, like, if you're not a little bit skilled, you think, well, hell with this meditation, you know.
Off to the races.
You got to be careful, you know, how you do it.
Okay.
The master made it really easy, I think,
For you,
I didn't have. He made it easier for a lot of people. I mean, Hung Guan and you know everybody, Hong Shun, all of the people that stayed with him, you know, they managed to, you know, get the idea that you can turn this state around into positive, and so, you know, like even in the early sutras, you know, before Mahayana in the so-called Theravada, the school of the elders, you know, there's so many stories about people that are murderers and, you know, terrible people that, you know, burn down villages and stuff, and they've got mountains of negative karma. There's many stories that illustrate all of that negative karma can be turned positively. There's many illustrations of that. And that's really Tantra. You know, that's really getting into Tantra, you know. Vajrayana.
Okay. The next question, we just got a few more. It's about Master Huana's Dharma body at, you know, all of these different way places. Or, I guess it kind of lends more to, do you think it's necessary to have a living enlightened teacher? Or is Master Hua's Dharma body sufficient? Or was that served more as like a basis for preliminary work, so you can work towards, you know, meeting your master?
I think that's an individual question, because there's a saying that's very true. When the disciple is ready, the master appears.
Yep.
So if you're in a way place, the Buddha also, when he was entering nirvana, they said, well, who are you going to take? Who should we take as our teacher? The Buddha said, ask Ananda to write it all down for you and do a little study and see what happens. So I think the answer to that question is, for some people it's very necessary, and some people it won't be necessary, because people with really good roots, they probably had teachers in the past. And if they enter a way place and they work in a way place, they can feel the presence of the conditions in the way place that serve as the Dharma body of the teacher, and they plug into that, and they really don't need to find another teacher. Gotcha. Other people, it might take a certain time, and then they kind of will come across a teacher just by virtue of being in Buddhism. Yeah. So I think that it's there's not a fixed answer to that, whether you need a teacher in the flesh, or you can enough to stay in a way place. I think a really good rule of thumb is to take as your teacher the precepts, and build a good foundation where you build a personal practice. Because if you build a personal practice and where you don't feel sexual desire, you don't feel desire for cravings like alcohol and drugs and stuff, and you just feel comfortable in your own skin as a practitioner, and you're not fighting with these things, then a way place, that'll be your teacher. The precepts will be your teacher, working with the community, maybe meditation, maybe service to the community, or whatever your place in the way place may be, because the way place is like interlocking where everybody has samaya together. You know what samaya means?
No.
It means commitment, and it means it in a very special way. Samaya means commitment to each other.
Right.
So, like in a way place, everybody is on the same path, and they're are like links in a chain, and they each support each other. So each person, whatever part he plays, whether it's a cook or a wano or somebody taking care of the grounds, if you're doing it with mindfulness, you're part of a link in a chain that is like one. Everybody's the bodhisattva ideal, supporting each other towards enlightenment, and you plug into that, and then you really can go. You can go with that. That'll you're evolved that way. If you cannot plug into that, and you don't feel that connection, it might be good to have a call on a good teacher to help you. But I think that it's really goes back to the if you need a teacher, he'll appear, even if you're in a way place that doesn't invite teachers.
Some way or how you come up in your
it'll
life.
happen, and it'll happen for you. So I think that it's not fixed. By any means.
Okay. No, that makes sense.
Many people meet great teachers and they're just complete slobs, and they live around that teacher for years. So, and there's lots of people like that, lots of monks too, so there's no guarantee you meet a teacher. What's important is, though, if you really work and then you meet a teacher, he can, like, in an instant, like, take you to another level.
Then you're prepared for the opportunity when it arises.
So the idea is that you work really hard, so if something happens, you're ready for it. A lot of times, like so many times as Shifu, you work really hard, and then something that he says to you would have awakened you, but then you missed it, and you missed it. You missed it after the fact. And it's terrible. And it can be like a month or 2 months getting over it. And that happens a lot. That's one of the reasons it's great to be around a great master like Shifu, because he makes you really feel like, I just could have almost got it, but it didn't quite. But and that drives you to try harder.
Okay. From your answer, I think it's it's like having faith in that adage. When your student's ready, the master will appear.
Yeah.
And and if there's no other better options, like this is the best thing. And just work hard. And things will unfold.
Yeah, because you can wind up looking around for masters, and that'll be just a guru game, a big waste of time. Because ultimately, even if you're with a master, it all depends on turning inside, finding the energy source in you, asking yourself, who am I, and looking at the nature of mind.
Yeah.
You have to do that. Nobody can do it for you.
Yeah.
So if you do that and you're consistent, you'll figure it out. You know. Yeah.
Okay, next question is a curiosity one. I think this came up in actually a recent video you posted with you and Fred Hung Shou talking cultivation or something. And he had mentioned that a few years back he had a dream about Master Hua entering the room and so forth.
Yeah, that's more than a dream. And I kept it, that I filmed about 3 years ago, and it was just a private conversation between he and I.
Right.
And I purposely did not publish it because I knew that Fred probably would not want that published. Yep. And he even said in the video, "This is I wouldn't say this to anyone else." But
he did say that. Yeah.
But since Fred has entered his nirvana, I think it's good that I released that video.
Yeah,
because I think he would want people. Fred was always one who wanted to instill faith in people. That he wanted to do without bragging. So obviously Fred's not here now, and it's not a question of bragging, and it's just a question of my thinking that that's what Fred would like. People have knowledge of that. Yeah. And it's probably pretty accurate. He had very good penetration. He told me, aside from that, many times that he thinks he's before that time when he had that dream. He told me before that he's going to be able to find Shirker.
He's going to be able to find
them. Yeah. So I think that what he said in that is probably pretty true.
Yeah. I'm curious if you went into any detail, because he said, he talked with him for quite a while. If he went into any detail about what they discussed.
He said he was about, didn't he say in that video he's about 12 years old in that time of that
Yeah,
time?
I think I wrote the date down. It was he mentioned 2012 or something. October 28th, 2012 was when he entered the room.
Date,
so he'd be 12 or 13 now or something.
Yeah, and he had other visions since then that what he looked like, and he didn't look like Shirfu.
Yeah, he changed identity.
Yeah, and so he and the master recognized him in the dream.
Okay.
Recognized Hung Shou.
Yeah.
And said something to him. Typically, the cycle of rebirth a lot of times is just 7 years. So I wouldn't be very surprised at all if Shirfu's not back a long time ago. But certainly by now. But complete his bodhisattva idea. If you're looking for him, just looking for somebody yelling and screaming and telling you to do stuff.
But that's kind of my, I guess, question, or what I'm wondering about is, and I think I've heard it from maybe others in the community, that Master Hua is going to come back. It makes sense to me that from a common sense perspective that he most likely come back here to continue what he left off, but maybe not. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good question. You look at the life.
恳其地球。 劫死生之内，各面轮回，就有是类之中，洗礼苦海。无风是雨，面照寂静之年。南无东教，居禅尧舜之日，坎坷永息，伽马修真，正拜上王，去生净土，非亲周受，罗网不逢，浪之谷上，召唤相近，无边世界，地久天长，愿尽贪难，真言福寿，三门真情，佛法常行，土地龙神，安生护法，父母师长，六亲眷属，历代先王，同登彼岸。南无清净法身，毗卢遮那佛。南无圆满报身，卢舍那佛。南无千百亿化身，释迦牟尼佛。南无极乐世界，阿弥陀佛。南无当来下生弥勒尊佛。南无清凉山金色界，大智文殊释利菩萨。南无眉山银色界，大恩普贤愿望菩萨。南无普陀山琉璃 大悲观世音菩萨。南无九华山有明见，大愿地藏王菩萨。南无大乘妙法莲华经，南无法华会上佛菩萨。红中在口，宝鸡高音，上车天堂，下通地府，进驻人间，民主康乐，恒济地球，尽出然。三界四生之内，各面轮回，就有是类之中，洗离苦海。无风是雨，免遭寂静之年。南无东教居占了孙之日，干戈永息，加马修正，正拜上王，取生净土，废寝走兽，罗网不封，浪之故上，召唤相近。无边世界，地久天长，愿尽贪那，真言福寿，三门真情，佛法常行，土地龙神，安生护法，父母师长，六亲眷属，历代先王，同登彼岸。南无清净法身，毗卢遮那佛。南无圆满报身，卢舍那佛。 千百亿化身，释迦牟尼佛。南无极乐世界阿弥陀佛。南无当来下生弥勒尊佛。南无清凉山金色界大智文殊释利菩萨。南无眉山银色界大恨普贤愿望菩萨。南无普陀山琉璃界大悲观世音菩萨。南无九华山有明界大愿地藏王菩萨。南无大乘妙法莲华经，南无法华会上佛菩萨。红中山口宝鸡高音，上车天堂，下通地府，进驻人间，民主康乐，恳祈地球尽除染。三界四生之内，各面轮回，就有是类之中，洗离苦海。无风是雨，免遭寂静之年。南无东教居占尧舜之日，干戈永熙，伽马修真，正拜上王，具身净土，废轻周受，罗网不封，浪之故上，召唤相近，无边世界 法常行，土地龙神安身护法，父母师长留亲眷属，历代先王同登彼岸。南无清净法身毗卢遮那佛，南无圆满报身卢舍那佛，南无千百亿化身释迦牟尼佛，南无极乐世界阿弥陀佛，南无当来下生弥勒尊佛，南无清凉山金色界大智文殊释利菩萨，南无峨眉山银色界大恨普贤愿王菩萨，南无普陀山琉璃界大悲观世音菩萨，南无九华山幽冥界大愿地藏王菩萨，南无大乘妙法莲华经，南无法华会上佛菩萨，南无当山呼叫伽蓝僧众菩萨，南无当山呼叫伽蓝僧众菩萨，南无当山呼叫伽蓝僧众菩萨。